Hi everyone, this is Jo and this is lovely Trevor, and this is the new SOMNIUM series that we're doing, which is sort of exploring lost ideas and lost ways, and bringing those things back, and talking about all things esoteric and I guess lost wisdom and ancient ways. So we had a few questions for Trevor this week, and one of the questions that I had for Trevor, and I might just put, I wonder if I can go back to the other view, Trevor. I wanted to show people um, this here, which is just a little clay piece. And it's made from an experience that I had with some elders. Now I've explained this to Trevor um, before I came on. So in 2020, I did a few series with Madeline Doherty, Maddie, and CJ Clint, and who was an Aboriginal elder. And Clint was talking about how he knew elders that would get these crystals given to them in the etheric, and they would be put deep up into their sort of rib cage, and that they would pull these crystals out and use them for people to heal with in the etheric. Now, I had a briefing with Trevor about this, because what happened a few nights later after having this discussion with Maddie and CJ was that an elder appeared by my bed during the night and handed me this incredible 3D crystalline, glowing, alive crystal, and handed it to me and told me to put it up under my sternum in my rib cage. This is just one that I made a replica. Now it doesn't do the original justice, because like all of these curves here and under here everything was perfect. So I asked Trevor if he could explain to me what this particular crystal might mean, and also what his knowledge was on that actual, I guess, phenomena, or elders having these crystals and using them in the etheric and in real life. So, Trevor, I'm going to hand over to you to speak about that if you could.
Yeah, I just put something in there because if the folks haven't seen, or maybe they've seen your first one prior, no, the video prior to this one. Yeah, keep
Oh,
holding it up. That's good.
yeah,
If they haven't seen the other one, or Rachel's session, I basically say I don't represent
yeah,
original people. I represent findings to me. And at any rate, I'm just in case you folks don't know, I'm considered a non-bloodline adoptee lineal. So not matrilineal, not patrilineal. Father to me was adopted by two different original people groups. And so just indicate you've heard the story already when I did the other one with Joe or not?
yeah. We can refer people back to that, but
No. Yeah.
if you want
Yeah.
to just do a
Okay.
brief
Yeah. All right.
intro about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, if I'm able to answer the question, I'm able to, and if I'm not, I'm not. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Joe showed me that item there, and as she just mentioned, one, there was the issue of the item, and two, she asked, was I aware of the usage of such items? Now, that particular one that Joe has, it correlates a lot with paintings and engravings. And so as soon as I looked at it, I'm looking at line, shape, form, and color. Now, there is no color in that one other than the material that she made the replica with, though she described to me what she saw in the vision with the colors, luminescence, and the like.
Mm.
So all I did was looked at that and interpreted what was in there, and that was that. Then the second part that Joe's asking me was, did I have any knowledge of this? And I do, and it's not extensive. Now, there was some difference. These differences could come about by the way people are telling a story or relating a story. And unless they actually mention some particular detail, an individual listener will create an image in mind to them. Yeah. So what happened here, allegedly, because I was not here at the time, I was working down in Sydney. When I come back, one of the aunties, mentor to me, she said there was a near riot. Sorry, this is early 80s, before 86, because I came back in 86. At Darwin Hospital, because an elder had passed, and all the blackfellow mob, they knew that they were going to do an autopsy, and they went and basically surrounded the building, filled the halls and everything else, and said, "You're not going to cut him." And the reasoning is because they knew that he had one of these crystals. Now, Joe's explained it as an etherical item and used in the etherical realm. And the way that I got the story, this are actually solid crystal. And when I talked to mob after, different mob, they understood it as being saying that they can actually put a solid crystal into body to them and take it out again. Okay.
Amazing.
So some of you might be aware of people who have this particular skill with manipulating the whether that's the right word or not, but influencing the third dimension to achieve outcomes that are not normally, and normally is not a really good word either, but which aren't generally, perceived as being possible. In other words, in the realm of fantasy, in regard to something made up. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a real thing, because what I want to say here is that when we're growing up as kids, there's one thing that we learned tacitly. It was never explained, but tacitly we learned, because well, someone like me with a mind that worked the way that mine did, I looked at mob and what they were doing, and then I looked at the other mob and what they were doing, and there was clear difference. Mob, true mob, regional mob, they don't make things up. It's a really psychic society. You just don't make things up. There is no reason to fabricate something. Like if you did want to lie, you know that everyone's going to know that you fabricated something. Like if you did it to get away from something, to avoid, repercussion or whatever from breaking law, you already know that everybody knows that you did it. Or all the mob that, at a certain level with the psychic stuff anyway. So they just don't fabricate things, and they don't need to. The article of fabrication really comes about when the Anunnaki demigod, black Jesuits and all the mob underneath, all the henchmen, they got a bunch of mob there, and they want to control them inappropriately as slaves. And then you give them too much of a hard time, and eventually they're going to implode or explode. So they created this thing called entertainment, which distracts you from the issue, and it's one of the articles of the hidden hand. So basically they fabricate a lot of stuff in there, through the epochs, all this stuff. And I'm not talking about LORE, where they're using articles from the environment as metaphor or symbol to create a story. Like that in essence is a type of fabrication, but it's a legitimate use of construction. But other stuff which is just made up is to take the mind away. That's what I refer as attractive distractors and distractive attractives. So point here is that blackfellow mob don't make things up. Yeah. And that's the way we grew up. Actually, I'll tell. Can I digress a little, Joe? Just really quickly.
We're all here to digress with you.
Okay. So we heard this thing. We heard this thing when we were kids. It's called playing bublo. Okay. So they don't have the phonetic F. So F becomes a B, or it becomes a P. You know, when we say fella, where you say pala, that pala, yeah, you know that pala, yeah, that pala, that pala, yeah. All right. But in Buffalo, the F becomes a B, so it's bublo. Don't ask me why. They're really good. Anyway, so we heard this story about playing bublo, and this story says that the elders can walk out into a flock of birds, what you refer to as game birds, geese, duck, or whatever, but usually it's geese, magpie geese here, very large bird. And they can walk straight into the flock and the flock won't fly, and then they'll get the birds that they want.
Yeah.
Well, we'd heard it, and people talked about it. You know, there's all that stuff. You know, when you're kids, you get you this. They're the storylines. You talk about it, and well, you know, and all this and whatever. But me, I've already deciphered, analysed that this must be correct because blackfellas don't make things up. And I'd already been, my mind was already working like that when I was around about 8 or 9 years of age. And that's only because I had some pretty far out experiences in other dimensional stuff that sort of, give some concrete to that. Now, so what happened one day, we were out hunting and two Aboriginal girls, twin sisters, one of them partnered with a white fella, another one single, another white fella mate and partnered to him, Caucasian lady, and me. And we were after pigs to get rid of tuberculosis, and we didn't get any. We saw some on the other side of the swamp. We couldn't get across the swamp in the vehicles we had. So Mick got a couple of ducks on this side, and we pulled up on the point, and they're sitting down plucking the ducks. And there was a flock of geese out there, about 60 meters out. That's what they do. They know where they can't get shot, and they sit there. You know, they've learned, you know, guns have been around here shooting geese for, 100 years or so. So they learned where to sit, not get shot. And the Aboriginal girl said, "Oh, we want some geese. Can you go and get the geese?" And then for some reason they all looked at me. And I said to Mick, I got no gun because I shoot with a camera. You know, when everything's happening, I just take photos with camera. And he said, "Oh, I'll give you one." And he gave me this old Spanish shotgun, and the caliber was slightly different to the caliber of the shell that they use now. So that shell is really tight. And he said that, when you want to get the shell out, you got to break it and you got to throw a lead sinker down the barrel, just down the barrel to knock the shell out a bit so you can get it out. So yeah, okay. But he only gave me one shell. I said, "Well, if you give me a sinker and another shell," anyway, so he did. So the girls knew that they wanted geese, and I'm already going. Mine to me is already going. Well, I've heard this, so now I'm going to do it. So what I did is I walked within the tree line down about 100 meters or so. So I didn't walk straight out from the camp. I've gone down about 100 meters or so. And then I've come out of the tree line and start progressing onto the plain. And I am no longer a human. I am now a bubbler. And those birds could not detect the difference. And I walked right into the middle of them. They separated and closed formation behind me, and then I was totally surrounded by geese. And the second that I started thinking like a human, you see the sentry birds, they're all sort of eating, but there's always a couple of sentry birds, and you see the sentry birds just go doop, they go up with the head doop, 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 like that. And they started to fly, then they all started to fly. Well, then, you get a couple of birds, and then you throw the lead sinker down and pull it out and pull a shell out and put another one in, get another shot in. And then it took me about, I don't know, 45 minutes to collect them all and take them back to the camp. And I said to Mick, you didn't tell me that bloody shell doesn't come all the way out. That's hot. Because I've grabbed the end of a hot shell. It only pushes out a couple of mils so you can get your fingernails around it, sort of thing. And I pulled out a hot shell and burnt the heck out of my hand. Anyway, I don't hunt anymore like that. But that was when I was a young fella. But that's just a story about the mental stuff, because I'm talking about the mental stuff, and I appreciate that some people need a personal link to what I'm talking about. In other words, I'm not just saying something that I believe, because I actually work with knowledge systems, not belief systems. The belief systems, when I say we believe the stories that we heard of our elders, is that's because of the knowledge that we had that blackfellas don't make up stories. I don't know whether you follow that thread, but anyway. So that's one story about the mind, because I think last session, Joe, I was talking about the mind, the power of the mind and that, and I've already mentioned it here now as well. Just before that. So I just thought I would share that, because people, I was in Vienna and then people are saying, oh, you got to tell stories. And when you tell the stories, they don't know what the symbols are. They don't get what's in the story. So you got to do, half an hour of going through what all the symbols are going in the story and then tell the story. So, that's all right. So I just worked out this format to just do all the clinical stuff, with the slides, and then just put in some personal stuff. So people can actually see I'm not just regurgitating something I read out of a book. That's the main point. Now, I digressed so far, I don't recall where I digressed from, Joe.
All right. So what I wanted you to do, and I love how you go on these stories. It's great. But with this, right, you told me you pointed out all these meanings in this particular
Yeah. Do you recall what I asked you, Joe?
sorry?
Do you
Oh
recall
yes.
what I asked you?
Well,
What
maybe no, not exactly. It depends on, we've talked about so many things,
okay.
so maybe you need to remind me.
Well, when you showed me that, I suggested something to you. I said, you know all that stuff because I've already covered it with you. And then I suggested count.
Yes,
Remember?
we're counting. Yes.
Count. Yeah.
So did
So
you
the yeah, sorry. Continue. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, can you explain to everyone here what the count is? When you come across a symbol, what the count is? Like on this one, perhaps.
Okay. The article of formative causality means what causes form. Now, when you're engaging with articles of formative causality, one of the most important principles is repetition. You hear the expression practice makes perfect. It's repetition. So you look at the music industry and the movie industry, and it's particularly the music industry, where there's so much repetition. You got verses that come again and again and again, and people are doing it again and again and again in their head, and they're putting all that humbug stuff out there, and people are putting that into the memory field because it's generated in conscious, thought causes form. It's going in the memory field, all this and more. But back to the point, count, because each vibration has a quality. And when you count any repetition that's there in the article, it will indicate to you what qualities are important in the syntax here. So, Joe, do you recall what they? You explain it, Joe. It's
Well,
good,
I'm
yeah.
going to try and explain.
No, you will attempt. Try. Don't
Yeah,
use.
okay, I'm going to
Try
attempt.
is not. Try is not a good word.
Okay, I'm getting educated on these words, and it's great that you're pulling us up because we are spellbound. So there were three of these circles that were in it. Now, when I was given this by the elder, this was crystalline, shining, and very three-dimensional, and completely beautiful and completely symmetric. There were two round, sort of glowing balls down here with holes in them, and this beautiful triangle that had the curves on it, the same angles as these. So we've got three circles, but we've also then got two more circles. So that's five. And there's three, so three and is important, isn't it? And then when we add the other two and go to five, this goes from 3D to 5D. So we're going from 3D to 5D with this particular piece. And Trevor, can you explain the rest of it? I know this column meant something. We have another 3 points on the triangle because that's a separate piece. And we actually have three separate kind of appendages, I would say.
Yeah.
How did I go?
So, yeah, pretty good. I don't recall if I discussed it on the previous session I did with you, Joe, or whether it was in a private session or whether it was with Rachel. However, the most important vibrations, and that's probably not a really good word, but the really effective ones for harmonics and balance are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6, 7, 8, 9, they got, they're relevant, but the original mob are really only using up to 5. And so when it comes to manifestation, and these types of crystals can be used in a lot of different ways, but can only be used from the heart, only with a heart vibration. They won't go any other way. They won't work. There's other things that we use as visual mechanisms when we're meditating, and if you do them wrong way, they don't work. They stall. My hand, they stall, But anyway, so it's 3, 4, and 5. So that article that you have there contains the 3, 4, and 5, and it also contains 2 zeros. And I don't know, did I cover the vibrations in the other session? These folks will know, or do you want me to go over
You
them
can go
again
over
quickly?
them again. That's okay.
Okay. So the numerical systems for around about the last 7,500 years, approximately, they have been just focusing on what they refer to as the whole numbers, prime numbers, and all the rest of it. And they've been ignoring the zero. Not ignoring it, but they didn't give it a numeric value. And because they were only interested in quantity, the zero was essentially being ignored. Okay. So original people are looking at the quality of the vibration before they're looking at the quantity that comes out of that vibration. Okay. So it's the quality of the vibration. So 0 is the symbol of everything. It's a circle, and it contains everything, including all potential. Now, that is a receptive shape, and that is how you draw the feminine receptive shape. That's what it is. It's a 0, okay? And why is that important is because the generative principle is feminine. It's the feminine generative principle. Contains everything. The male is expressed within that circle. That's the first straight line in sacred geometry. And that's expressive energy. So the circle is or a sphere. We're just talking about 2D here because it's easy. That looks pretty much 2D the way I'm looking at it. So the circle or sphere, that's the feminine, and it contains everything. And you'll see, some of you'll know on this planet that they got rigid pyramid hierarchies, all male dominated, and they know what they've been doing for thousands of years. They've been suppressing the feminine. Some of you be aware of that one. I don't want to say the full name, but you know that insidious grove where all the politicians and bankers and everything go to over there in America. The sick mob. And one of the rituals there is the cremation of care. So when you look at natural law, you got the law of mentalism and you got the law of care. The principle of mentalism becomes the law of mentalism. The principle of care becomes the law of care, and the care is from the feminine generative principle. So they have cremation of care. So they know what they've been doing for thousands of years on this planet is suppressing the feminine.
Cremation of fear. Yeah, cremation of the feminine. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's called cremation of care. That's care.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, some time ago, I think 2017, I'm not going to talk too much about this in terms of detail. We don't want to reveal certain locations for reasons because other mob find out and then they desecrate sites. But on this continent, we have 2 triangles and with a center. And serendipitously, I was led to one in 2000 and then the other one in 2016. And law I was given was law of balance. So when it's too long a story here, but this involves the Strongs being with them and all the rest of it. Joe knows them. And so I worked out what to do, and I got the right groups of people together, and we did ceremony on the song lines on these principal vortexes to reinstate feminine back into rightful place of balance. So not on top, not beside. Sorry, not below, but beside. So you hold that up again, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, you can hold it that way or you can turn it up the other way. It doesn't really matter. But the critical thing there is that triangle already telling you that there is I suppose if you use it as the word direction, you could point it to the east and to the west, and then those 2 circles will be, one above the other. But that is how they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in balance. Okay. Now there's 2 of them. Now the thing is that the bridge between the 2 of them sort of looks like a rectangle. Yeah, there. Okay. Yeah. That's actually the 2 lines. The article when the first expression couldn't work out if it really existed, realized the potential if it make another one of itself, then it can see self. So it expressed out onto the edge of the radiant field or the first circle, put another one there, and that with its radiant field coming back through the center of where it just came from, and you got your 2 overlapping circles. That's the first step in sacred geometry. And if you draw one line like that, and the story is it saw the path that it made, knew where to go back. So already right there in the beginning, they are discussing the article of memory, because nothing can come into being nor can persist in being without the article of memory. It's got to remember, you look at the rock, you look away, look back at the rock, it's still there. Why? Because it can remember what it is. Same as all atom in the 3rd dimension can remember what they are. You got data, which is information, cause something to come into form, but you need a memory field. So that already says is a memory field. Now, the 3 with the triangle on top, well, I think we already discussed that with the trilogy aspect there. So the 3 is where you're going to be focusing for manifestation. And so because the 3 is the product, progeny or child. So the 1 and 2 come together, you got the 3 straight away. And when you're doing any of this sort of work, and it's got to be from the heart, if you do it wrong way, you're going to get the comeback. You folks know that as karma. That's also the law of reciprocity, which is there in those 2 lines that go between the 2 circles. So when you're focusing here, and I've mentioned this to Joe, and I'm not going to really take it further than this statement, though. What you need to do is you need to get into the vibration of 5 into the vibration of 4, because 4 is choice. We call it right choice. Okay. And then right out, and you got to align all those 5, 4, and right over the center of 3. And that's when you can actually make changes in the physical world that, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't be possible. But the mind is a very, very powerful thing, as long as you know how to focus, be determined, and use the power of the vibration, the inherent qualities of that vibration that are already there. So when Joe showed me that, and I just looked at it and I thought, oh, well, and I just did a quick count and looked at the shapes and I said, well, it's all the 3, 4, 5 stuff. So it gives it's power stuff straight up. And so one, the crystal has got the power in it, but 2, being visual animals, or all animals are visual except blind moles, I suppose. But we focus on things that are tangible in front of us, because that helps to focus. When you got a really, really strong mind, you don't need that article in front of you. And I think I discussed smoke last time, Joe, with you, did I? About focusing on smoke, yeah. So yeah, at the end of the day, this crystal already going to be charged, and it's going to be charged in a what can I say, in a huge way. You know how you got all these crystals you can work with, and they got all their archetype energies, and they'll give some sort of outcome, but you've still got to align the mental framework with their signature to create more effective power, if you like, to get a certain outcome. And it takes a lot of practice for some people, and some people get it pretty quickly. So, but these crystals, it's already programmed, to use a word, and empowered, and these fellows just knew
So Trevor,
how to use it.
when the elders had these, from my talk with CJ years ago, they all had their own unique one that was given to them, and it would be put in their body somewhere. Now you're saying some of the elders they actually had real crystals that would go into their body and be hidden, and then some of them had the etheric ones, but obviously both very powerful when they would pull them out and use them on people if they were sick or injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, have one of the other things I wanted to know was pre-white settlement, and I know you're not Indigenous, but you have a lot of knowledge. Were crystals being taken out of the ground in any capacity and being used? Like how much of that was going on before white settlement, the actual use of crystals and different types of crystals and their understanding of their different frequencies? Do you know that?
The understanding of the frequencies is very high. I mean, these mob here, that something comes over from Asia 700 years ago, and they didn't know the medicinal properties of this plant. The mob here worked out the medicinal properties of it in who knows how long. So it's tuning into frequencies. I know that's a plant. We're talking about crystals, but it's all vibrational stuff. Okay. So I'll put it this way: original people did not mine for articles in the ground in the context that we see mining today.
Yeah.
So if something is on the surface, they will take something that's on the surface if they got a use for it. If taking something from the surface exposes something else underneath, well, then they've got access to that too. So you can imagine a quarry, and they go in and they find the first things there, and they're making flint tools and whatever it is, jasper and different types of rocks, get really good sharp edges, and or even pounding rocks or whatever type of rock they're after. And they remove some from the top, while it exposes more underneath, but they're not actually digging these big tunnels
Yeah.
like the modern system. Okay. So in terms of crystals, wow, there are so many different ones that Aboriginal mob use for different purposes. And I'm talking about in um traditional ways, like in the yesteryear, and because there's a lot of mob now have become even more in tune with this stuff because of the modern environment with people working with crystals. The books that are available, the shops that are available, and to procure crystals from, that type of thing. But in a traditional setting, they're using crystals, certain types of crystals for certain outcomes. And what I was explaining before, you got the signature in the crystal itself, and then you're using the mind, and you got to couple those two together to create the effect. And yeah, so and there are ones where some I won't touch. And just for example, Joe, or just for the others, when we were mentioning the Strongs, and I went to their place. Well, the Strongs were actually stewards of all these different types of rocks, and these things are engraved uh, with really intricate stuff. Some of them, and these days people are unable to engrave that stuff. Even with a Dremel, or it might take them, a couple of weeks to do some of this stuff, even if they could do it. But anyway, there's all these different types of rocks there. First thing I knew when I walked in, well, first I asked, "Is it all right to play the sticks?" Because I always ask them for permission. They looked at me and they said, "You're the first black fellow that come in there and actually wanted to play the sticks." And I said, "Well, yeah, because I've got to introduce self. You just can't walk in blindly. You got to introduce self." So I played sticks. Anyway, they took me into the backyard and showed me all these rocks. The first thing I knew is, don't touch anything. Don't touch them. Now we found, or these kids found this thing in a creek when I was working in after school care, and they brought it, and I said, "Oh, okay." And so I wrapped it in a towel, showed it to Elder. He didn't want to touch it, and he gave it back to me, and I said, "Well, how come you giving it to me if you don't want to touch it?" And he said, "Yeah, no, you're safe." Whatever that meant. But the thing is, you know, the I'm not sure what the word is here. It's like there's an integrity that if it's compromised, you get a comeback. Yeah. So we don't touch something until we actually know it's okay to touch.
Mm.
So there, I have been with an elder, had been with an elder. And we were walking along, bush job, and it was fairly soft soil in on the margin of a rainforest area, a damp area, and we saw this thing, this item, and he just looked, and I could feel the energy coming off it, and he looked at it straight away and he said, "Oh," and he got a stick and he pushed it down into the mud. He said, "No one should find that." Because it was an article that was held by someone who got certain power that may not be used appropriately. Now that's, from what I can gather, that type of thing wouldn't have happened a lot. It's more of a story. There's two types of stories with the FEA FEAR in them when you're kids. One lot is real, and the other lot is Santa Claus job. When you get older, you realize, oh, you weren't at the right level to know something yet. Okay. Yeah. Um, so uh, the thing is that these mob these mob knew about reciprocity, come back. So if you're a Daisha man or someone who's got once someone has broken law where there's harsh punishment, and particularly if you lost right to be in this third dimension because you've done real grievous harm to somebody, and then the Gadachi man can't just sing someone because he doesn't like him. there's got to be integrity in there. It can only be done for right reason, because that person's broke the law, and they end up with that particular punishment. And they know, because you learn all that stuff when you go through initiation. Anyway, this particular stone had power that Uncle didn't like at all, and he reckoned that no one should see that, and he pushed it down into the mud as far as he could with his stick.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. It's a story, So, yeah. So anyway, crystals, yeah, useful, lots of things. I'll tell you, one of the best ones, because I use it, is the black tourmaline, and they trade that from the desert area out to everywhere else, because where you find it a lot is where you find garnets, in the desert area, Harts Range and areas around there, all that sort of country. And that black tourmaline is, you line this with it and you put it so that you can put a block to stop mob coming doing humbug. It's a protection stone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Oh, is that Sarah? Oh, cool. Black tourmaline. Check that out.
Yeah.
I didn't even, here I am just telling, how synchronistic is that? Or serendipitous or whatever. Yeah, that's cool. So original mob used the black tourmaline a fair bit for protection.
From humbugging.
To ward off. Yeah.
Can I say something? It's Charlotte.
Sure. Who's that?
Charlotte.
Do you remember that story I told you, Joe, about the black tourmaline and how I touched it
Yes.
and it broke straight away?
Yeah.
That was very interesting. I thought I'd add that in. And how we went to the crystal shop and I changed my mind at the last minute and got the amethyst.
Yeah. So Charlotte had some tourmaline, or she touched some tourmaline that shattered. So what do you make of that, Trevor?
It's telling you to go for the amethyst.
I think it was in two different
It's telling you you didn't need that. And look, this is just me. You're just looking at symbols straight up. If something like that happened, you go, okay, it's not meant to be. So you go into an alternative. Or you could leave the store without procuring anything at all. But if you felt like drawn to something else, well, the tourmaline, it's very unusual for tourmaline to shatter, because that's pretty full on. It would have already had some sort of fracture. Somebody would have dropped it or something before. So it could have been indicating to you, don't grab me, because I'm not going to last long, because it already had a fracture. Yeah.
It was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift.
Or it's telling,
someone
sorry.
gave it to her.
Somebody gave it to me because they said, I feel like you really need to have this. So she picked it up off her desk and she gave it to me. And then I put it in my pocket, and it was like, before I put it into my pocket, it was solid. And I was touching it and, as you do, and, sort of pressing hard on it and all that. And I put it in my pocket. And when I sat down and then when I stood up, I obviously didn't bang it on a table or a chair or anything, and it broke in half, completely straight down the middle. And this was in the space of maybe 3 minutes. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, it's done what it needed to. It's taken away whatever it's done its job in my mind. And not that it wasn't for me, but that it was for me, and that it took what it needed. It did what it needed to do, basically.
Yeah.
And what I did was I buried it so that it could be back with its family, with its original family under it. And I thought that was nice because it gave me what it gave me, and I thought I'd give it a gift and leave it with its own kind,
Good work.
Yeah, I think you're right, Charlotte, because as you were saying that, as you begin to say that, and you said that someone else gave it to you, because I thought you had bought it, and as soon as I got that image coming in, and I thought, oh, hang on, this thing actually cracked because it did work, and now it's finished that work.
Yeah.
So I feel the conclusion you made is really hard to say, but it's an intuitive process. So you trust intuition to you. I was actually going down that line as well, and you said it split right down the middle, so it didn't crack horizontally. Yeah, like it's a long piece and it split right down the middle.
It was about the size. It was probably 3 centimeters across and
Mm.
maybe 1.5 centimeters high, sort of that size. And yeah, I just thought, oh, that's a nice gift, thank you. And I took it and
Mm.
I thought I'll put it in my pocket for safekeeping. And it was the front pocket, so there was nothing to, like, I wasn't sitting on it. And even if I was sitting
Yeah,
on it, for it to break exactly in half, perfectly straight,
Mhm.
like it was
yeah.
smooth. It looked
I
with a
was
knife.
wanting to determine. Sorry, because I don't see you. I don't know if you stopped talking or continue, Charlotte, and then I'll.
Oh no, I finished. I finished.
Okay. So I was wanting to determine if it's an asymmetrical shape, a length greater than the width. Which way are you describing the middle? Down the length or across the width?
So 3 centimeters across. It was now 1.5 centimeters across. So along like the long side, imagine that lying down,
Yeah.
and then on a horizontal, and then the cut being vertical, like down that way. Do you know what I mean?
So it's split on the long axis, yes? So you got two long bits now.
Yeah, two long bits laying down.
Okay. Okay. So to me, I'm just looking at symbols here. That's a separation of the spiritual and the physical.
Oh, very
And
interesting.
so there may have been. I'm just doing this as if it was dream to me because that's how we do it. It's dream to you, but we just go through the symbols, and if it's meaningful for you, that's meaningful for you. For you, if not, well, I just told a story. Anyway, you got the spiritual and the physical. It would seem that if it's done the work, it's actually done the work to show you that there is a difference, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to be aligning those two, not one foot facing one way and one foot facing the other way. You need to be
Mm-hmm.
aligning two. So that's an article of balance. And the really good thing about it is you ended up with two. You were given one and you ended up with two. And then you put them back in the ground, which is beautiful. So yeah, that's magic. That's yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because it was actually a session we'd had, and it was like an energetic sort of process. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, what we were talking about at the time was, I think, very appropriate to what happened, because I showed her and I said, look, there's two pieces. And she's like, okay, interesting. And she goes, well, it must have done its job then. And I said, I think so too. And
Mm.
that's what I took from it. And I felt a lot better afterwards. You know, uh, like you said before about the physical and the spiritual and separating. I felt like you know,
Mhm.
yeah, I just felt like what you just said, like it did its job. Whatever it was, it did it.
Mm.
Because I obviously didn't have the intention of, it splitting in half or whatever.
No, it happened organically, which was beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's my
Thanks.
piece on top for the black tourmaline. Just thought I'd add that in.
Thanks,
Thank
Charlotte.
you.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
So, Trevor, I know there's a few people with questions. Jen had some questions about the ley lines. Jen, did you want to come on and?
Sure. Trevor, I'm hoping that you could tell me and us what the actual purpose is of ley lines. My understanding is that electricity or some kind of force runs through the ley lines, is that for the benefit of all sentient beings, or is that critical for Mother Earth? Like, I'm just really curious as to what the true nature of them are, because I've seen things where trees grow round ley lines and animals won't nest on ley lines. So there's obviously a reverence for ley lines from sentient beings, maybe not so much from humans, because So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right. Okay. The questions I got here, and which Joe forwarded to me before: why do animals and trees avoid making homes and growing on ley lines? Does that mean humans should not walk on ley lines? How do we honour ley lines? Is that duty to stop anything being on top of them? You go on to mention buildings, diminished power. What's the role of ley lines? Do they enable communication? Do they maintain the electric web that we all tap into? And what is their true purpose? So it's better to start at the last one first, which you just did anyway, and it sort of explained everything else. I had covered a fair bit of this in the Lay Love Down, but that's fine. The purpose is this: energy's got to flow, and in the third dimension, it will flow down a conduit. So if you provide a conduit, that's where it's going to go. Now you look at the body to you have all these conduits, and the energy flows through them. You got nervous system, vascular system, renal system, lymphatic system, etc. So when I did the lay love down thing, I probably, there was not enough time to really get into some of the depth there. I showed a couple of slides there and described, well, firstly, I make up words, or I make up terms, or I apply terms that I think fit. And just because all these mob with all the electronic instruments, they walk around and do all the stuff, they may be using different terms, but I will usually find a correlation to what I've been using and to what they're talking about in terms of differentiation with different aspects of lines. So, because we're just calling them song lines here, okay? But that's an English term because Aboriginal mobs sing on them. So that'll come back in a minute when we're talking about communication. So the purpose is this: energy got to flow somewhere, okay? Even in a crystal, the crystalline structure, it's got lines, okay? You look at a crystal, it's got facets. If it's amorphous, you don't see the facets, but if it's a crystal shape, it's got facets. So what is that? It's a plane, and what's on the edge of a plane are lines. They're lines, and they're all throughout the lattice of a crystal formation, you're going to have lines, and they're essentially conduits where energy flows. So the planet Earth has the rigid, what I refer to as the skeletal system, and that's the dodecahedron with all those nodes, and that you can see, and you can get the app on for Go Ogle, and you can zoom into the area where you are and see all the straight lines. And then there's the other system, which is the vascular system, that's the term I use, and they're all the fluid lines. They're not straight, and they're very much like dendritic system, like roots and how trees branch and how lightning happens, and they feed into one another. And then where there's confluence of those, you get vortexes, or lines crossing, you get vortexes. Where fluid ones cross over skeletal ones, with vascular cross over skeletal, you get different types of vortexes. A lot of different things. Yeah, Joe's just showing the app there. Okay, so the purpose is for energy to flow. So this concept of Gaia being a blackfellow mob, anyway, we treat rocks as conscious entities, because they are to us. So anyway, they and do they maintain the electric web that we all tap into? Well, everything is electrical in nature, and electricity only occurs because there's poles, and everyone's talking about electromagnetic. Well, I use the term magnetoelectric because I'm not really sure of the semantics there, but if you say electromagnetic, it's implying that the magnetism is caused by electricity, which is not correct. You need the poles of a magnet for a current to flow between. So it's magnetoelectric as far as I'm concerned. Now, I could be wrong. We use the semantics there, and it probably doesn't matter. I just thought I'd throw that in because I'm going to keep saying magnetoelectric, and you probably think I'm off with the fairies. Anyway, so yes, and that is the electric thing. I mean, you got to have shoes off, and you put your feet on the ground, and then you are grounded. Yeah, because you are electric, and you need to be in touch with all of that other stuff that you're related to. It's for life. It's all important. You can go really, really deep on all that sort of stuff, the Vaxis and everything else, but I think you appreciate what I'm saying. Yes, definitely. It's all electric stuff, and there's connection. We're all, we're just little fellas living on a big fella, but we're still connected, and all the stuff's going back. So, do they enable communication? The song lines themselves are used for maps. They're used to store memory. With that repetition on the borer and on lines and or anywhere that you may want to be. If you look at the laid up down one, you'll see, so I don't have to repeat a lot there. But so yeah, useful communication. And what are the role? Well, the role is within the purpose, which we already discussed, is for flow and whatever. What role do they serve for humans is that they are integral part of the memory field. And so we put what we're doing when we're doing ceremony, we're putting intent for the continuation of harmonics and balance of the natural world, because we are part of nature. If it disappears, and so do we. And that intent is with love. And so we're putting that into the memory field. And silicon is the most abundant element in the Earth's crust. And now they make the silicon chip, and it's a memory system. But the computer only works when the power is on. The natural system is always working. Okay, so all ancient cultures, that's why all the temples and churches of yesteryear, they all put on top of vortexes, because they know that the stuff goes in there and then it's stored. And because it's like a barcode, it can affect anything else that come after to some degree or another. So anyway, then many buildings have deliberately been built on ley lines. Does this diminish their power? Now that question, are you asking, does that diminish the power of the ley line? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, does it make it less accessible? Because it's, we know the type of people that are doing that.
Okay, yeah. What it does, the ley line is still there. It's the hardware inside there, because it's the memory field. That's the software. It's like the program. So that's why what we're doing is, you see that picture behind me? That's the song line I sing here. And this runs in a couple of Ks to the, I'm back to front here, but to the, onto the left of that image there, we as you're seeing it, is the main line that goes from Uluru through to Bali. And that's where I do the work here. So the thing is, the stuff is always going in there. If you put buildings on them, what it means is that, okay, I made the reference to the computer. All vortexes are different, or there are different types of vortexes. Yeah? And a lot of people are using the word portal. Well, all portals are vortexes, but not all vortexes are portal. So when we're using the term portal, that's when we go through, we translocate, we come out somewhere else. That's what we call a portal. And you go up a level with portals, and you get what they refer to as stargates. Okay, that's like massive portal job. At any rate, so when you got a keypad and you got A, B, C, you got all these different letters, you hit one letter and it gives you an outcome. Imagine the Earth system with all the different vortexes. You find the vortex that will give you a certain outcome easier than a different type of vortex will. And some you don't go near, especially at night time, because humbug already been seated there and come through. right? So there's a lot of
Mm.
safety stuff there. You look at the other one that I did with Rachel, because I go into more there. So at the end of the day, the buildings themselves don't change the energy field. It's still there. The intent, the software that's being put into the hardware is the stuff you got to get rid of.
Mhm.
In other words, tell them up to just leave the planet, because we're not interested. Okay. Is it our duty to stop anything being on top of them? Well, duty, we have a duty of care, and where we are able to be effective with that, we will be. I would suggest, don't become too frustrated if it seems like nothing can be done, because I'm an advocate for the universe will unfold as it should. So we do what we can, where we can, when we can, for the good of all. And that basically means at all times. And because law of correspondence and law of reciprocity and law of care, three that come to mind straight up. And so we're doing things because they're right, not because we want a badge for ego or whatever. We're just doing it because it's right. So if you're able to affect a building going on top and by, protesting or putting a petition, whatever the means are and the mechanism of the illegal system, maritime system that's on this planet, I'm sure some of you will know what I'm talking about there. Then go for it. I also mentioned on Rachel's thing that if you see something and it's already been done, applied in a negative way, and if you're really strong or working with a group, you can do a focus on it. But beware that when you put a focus on it, often it sees you as a target and wants to get back at you anyway. So what I'm advocating for people who aren't prepared to take on the full bombardment like Rachel does is turn away. Always turn from right to left. Okay, you turn away and then look in the other direction. You're still on the line, look in the other direction, and then do the work. But also at the same time, protect the psychic gate, because now the psychic gate, the back of your neck, is facing where the other stuff is. So, if you use your mind, that's strong, that's good. But if you really want to, you take your spirit hand, left hand, and put it on the back of your neck. And to be really safe, just find a place where you can sing and put the love into the earth where there is no humbug. But I'm only saying this because, not everyone wants to go out and take on the hard stuff where to clear the humbug stuff that's already been put in there. I mean, it's a major task, but people need to be doing it. So is it our duty? The word duty, I suppose it's okay. What the word I use for me personally is that I have a responsibility. Because I have knowledge, I am therefore responsible.
Mm.
Whether you consider that a duty, to me, duty is like signing up to the army or something. I don't know. It could be just me, the way I with certain words, but I for me, it's responsibility. So the thing is this: if I walk along and it looks like I'm doing nothing, it doesn't mean I'm doing nothing.
Mm.
Okay, because you all seen that cop show, that detective show, Columbo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah hasn't, but that's fine, Sarah. I'll explain to you what happens. He
Sarah's
goes
too young,
along
I think.
this whole narrative, and everybody thinks he's silly and he's silly, and then right in the end, the closing, he's there and he just put it all together. It looks like he was doing nothing. It looks like he's just been a congenial fella saying, "Oh, that happened to you, this what," but he is just watching. He's got all the pieces. He put them all together, and he's got it. Okay, so the point is this: not to make a fanfare, not to become a target. Yeah, because as soon as you behave like a wannabe, well, you will attract the attention of the humbug mob. You just walk along and just do the stuff. Yeah. I hope that
Thanks,
sort of
Trevor. There was a
explains
lot
it.
of information in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of
So how do we honor the ley lines? Now, honor, well,
Well, you kind of said it. We sing intention.
you look after them. They are you. They are you. We are them. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're going to look after anything that's part of you.
Yeah.
And should not walk on ley lines. No, you can walk on them. If they're too hot, you don't stay there too long. I covered that on Rachel's session. And why do animals and trees avoid making homes and growing on ley lines? They don't. Circumstantially, if you're going to I don't know, this story come to mind. If the family's going to have a baby and you start looking for prams, all of a sudden you just see heaps of prams. Yeah. If someone tells you that they don't grow on the here or this or that and the other, and then you seed that in there, and then you'll start to see all the ones that don't, but you're not taking in the ones that are.
Sure. Understand.
Yeah. It's a filter.
Yep.
It's a filter process. So what happens is they behave differently. They don't. In some really hot areas, they may circumstantially not be growing straight on a line. But here's another thing, where they build roads and where blackfellows travel, and even in the Celtic system, they're following these lines because they're pathways, they're maps. We use them as maps. Yeah, the same as birds and whales and everything else. You can feel them, use them as maps. So if you got a road there, well, there are no trees growing there.
Yeah.
If you got a track or a path, there's no trees, and then that gets translated into they never or whatever. But they do. We see it all the time. Incidentally, while we're talking about this in the memory field, and I mentioned on Rachel's thing, is that there is a focus on the ley lines, and there's one element here in the memory field that a lot of people weren't getting. Hopefully they do now because I put it out there, and other people are aware of this too. But I see so many texts and things, and they're just so focused on the ley lines. But it's integral part of the memory field. But there is another integral part which is everywhere. You know what it is?
Water?
We're talking about
Water?
Yeah, exactly, Jen. Good work.
Work, Jen.
Water.
Jen the mermaid.
So water holds memory. And you can see all the experiments. You can do them yourself. Yeah. And the other thing is, I told a story on Rachel's thing where the trees in front of a church, 200-year-old trees, European species in Sydney, planted 200 years ago, whatever, and there's so much dross in them. And why is the memory stored in there? Because the tree's full of water. So you cut down happy trees like Amazon rainforest, and you're asking for trouble, You're asking for humbug.
Sorry, Trevor, I just wanted to ask a quick question about the the memory field.
Yeah.
Do you think metals disrupt that, and that perhaps maybe even that's why they're building things like buildings out of metal now? And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Maybe because, Sarah, heavy metals affect us. Metals affect the earth, like they affect, heavy metals get into our brain or into our bodies, and it's a poison. So is that sort of the correlation, like with the metals?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just thinking like when you put it in your body, it kind of disrupts your own memory field. So if we were to apply that to the earth, it would be doing, the exact same thing. Yeah.
Good question.
Well, there's that started with building with metal, and then that went to heavy metals in the body. So there's two different things, but they're both humbug. Okay, so building with metal is not necessarily humbug, but you have to be very, very careful. You can create blocked energy features by the way the metal is aligned in a construction. So you have to be really careful when you're going to erect a metal shed, for example, where it's going to be, and if it's going to be blocking any energy because it acts as a conduit. You think of electricity, it's just going to pass down something which is copper. Well, these types of energies will pass through anything which is, they even go through the air. They become airborne and then breach back down into the ground again. So you got a metal structure there and you impede it. You could block it and cause sick building syndrome. Lots of things contribute to sick building syndrome, but I did a session in Sydney and I took mob into Warringah Mall because we were in the bush nearby. And I said, "Oh, okay, you want to feel this stuff and come over here." And so we all jumped in the cars. We drove down there. It wasn't far, about 3 km away. And I took them into the mall and just showed them how to, because we had been doing an intuitive sensing workshop, and walked them in there, asked them what could they feel, what could they feel, what could they feel, and they could all feel the stresses where the stresses were. Okay, so if you can feel that stress, what it is it's a vibration, and if you're feeling it, I think I did this in Rachel's thing, is that what you're feeling is the buoying. If you have a harmonic vibration, you tend not to notice it. What you notice is that you feel relaxed, but you don't actually feel anything in the body that's like a buoying. So I put it to this. If you watch Rachel's things after, this is a repeat, but you get a drum skin and you put all these little pebbles, same size fellas, and you get a beat going, and then they're all dancing together. They're happy mob, yeah, all going together. And then you get one fella and you throw him, same size fella, and you throw him in there out of beat, and what happens? Boing, he gets kicked out. Same like when you're on a trampoline with two people, you come down at the wrong time and your knees end up in your chin. Yeah. So that is what you're feeling. So when you're feeling the boing like that, that is when you need to be alert and keep self safe, because if you stay in vibration of this nature too long, they're disharmonic with the biomagneto-electric body. Okay, similar to high voltage power lines, microwave, radar wave, radio wave, 5G, Wi-Fi, all that humbug stuff. And in the earth, we got frequencies, dead earth energy, stagnant underground water, compressed underground water, fault lines, vortices that spin at really high speeds, too hot for us, uranium up at the top, lead, molybdenum up in the food chain, in the top, in the surface. And just colloquially here, these areas are referred to as sickness country. Most people think sickness country is to do with uranium because of the media focus on that at the time when all the protests were going on. Was a big issue. But anything that's humbug, that's disharmonic, that's sickness country. We don't sit on top of that stuff. So the buildings themselves are not necessarily humbug, but they can be. I went to the Champs-Élysées in, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's in Paris. Runs from the Eiffel Tower up to some other big church thing. And, there's 10,000 people there, and it was really hard to filter anything. So I said, stuff this. So I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the only guy that was there was some guy collecting garbage bins. There was no one. I had the whole joint to myself. Then after a while, it got a little bit, 5 o'clock, there was a few joggers going, but there was no one there. And then I walked down, and then I realized that the people who designed that place knew exactly what they were doing with energy. And it's no wonder that so many people visit there. It's not merely because of the things that they build. There's all sorts of hidden stuff in the Arc de Triomphe, and anyway, you've probably seen some stuff on the net about all that sort of stuff. But they knew what they were doing with energy. That doesn't mean that they were doing right or wrong. I'm not making a statement either way there, but they knew how to utilize the energy, for the flow that was there. So that's what I was saying about with the building. If you know that, and people who do feng shui analysis, that's exactly what they're working with. Energy, whether it's being disrupted or whatever. So
Sandy had a bit of a question there for you, Trevor.
Sandy had a question. Yeah, sorry. Someone just sent something in the chat.
Yeah, there's a few things coming up that people want to ask. Sandy, do you want to go ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Trevor.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your information. It's been really wonderful. And I was listening to you talk about the stress lines, and many times in my life, I've walked through lines. Some I felt like a thermal, you could feel temperature, but there are lines where I walk through, I have this massive influx of happiness. Now I can feel dark ones as well, but are the happiness ones ley lines? Like there's this massive surge. All I can describe it is the earth's it's like goes straight up from the ground straight through me, but it's pure happiness and love. And I feel it stops me, and there's this rush of intense energy, and it's just and I just wondered if they were like happiness lines. And I hear the song ones because I hear the songs come in on some, but some are like this energy that shoots up through the earth, and it's incredible. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Has anyone ever heard the expression, I'll have what she's having? Sandy, look, if you got spots like that, stay with them. Now, if it feels like it's shooting straight up, it's quite likely that you're on a vortex. And with the vortexes, I've mentioned elsewhere, maybe not here tonight, but the conscious intent is a vibration, and it entrains very easily into the physical field vibration that already exists. So in other words, your conscious vibration can go into a chair, can go into a car, it can go into your bed, it can go anywhere. But when we're doing focus on stuff, if you're on a line of energy, it's easier to put that into the Mother Earth memory field. And if you go to a vortex, that is the easiest place. Okay. And these vortexes can join up with other ones. And the other thing is that you get pulse. And if you walk, I'm gonna digress a bit here. Hopefully I don't lose the plot for you, Sandy. But if you're walking somewhere and you're tuning in somewhere, be a radar dish. If you're not sure which way the energy is flowing, rotate. The same as a radar dish. Tune your body like this, and you'll get like if I do it in terms of sensing workshop, I go through all this sort of stuff. This is just a little briefing because of what you were saying there, and then you'll see which way it's flowing. Okay, because it's not going to be going both ways; it'll flow one way. And then the other thing you're looking for is if you've got the same place, go back and see if you can detect a pulse.
Yeah,
I'll give you a good example. Yeah, for the benefit of the others, I'll give you a good example of pulse. Sometimes you go to Nimbin, you're driving in and you go, oh, this feels really nice, we'll stop for a cuppa. Other times you're driving in and you're going, because I used to live nearby at one point in life to me, and other times you go, oh, it's so heavy today, I'm just going to keep going, and you just don't bother, okay? Because the energy pulses, okay? So if it's loaded with a vibration, and that vibration actually pulses, and you don't know what other data's coming after. But if you found a spot or a number of spots where it's all this good stuff coming through, just be really grateful. I would be. That's magic. That's absolutely magic. I mean, sit there, because, the things that happen in life to us, we are symbols in this dimension. And the things that happen to us are symbolic of roles, and, which are pretty much put together through a whole series of experiences. You have an experience like that, you're having that on behalf of everything, of all the humans, all the plants, all the animals. So that to me, like, that's absolutely magic. Now, so I'm not really sure whether you're on a line or a vortex, but I've got more. If you feel like it's going up like that, it's more likely to be on a vortex or a complex of vortex.
You can bring us all there, Sandy.
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
I had another question.
Sorry?
Had another question about Like, do you find that ley lines do affect people mentally and emotionally?
They do. If they're charged, see, it's not the line itself. Okay, that's the hardware. You gotta look, what intensity is it? That's when I use the word hot. Okay, when I say hot, that's really intense. That's like cutting, bzzz, and you feel it, right? And what else is it? The intensity, the pulse, the actual information that's coming through it. I lost the plot there. What was your full sentence again with your question?
Yeah, does the ley lines affect people mentally and emotionally?
Yeah. Okay. So the hardware aspect is going to be there. It's what it's loaded with. Okay. Let's put it this way: if you got a copper wire and you put 5 volts through it and you touch it, nothing happens. You put 240 volts through it and then you get a shock. Okay, so it's still the same hardware, yeah, but you've got a different load on there. So with these lines, sorry, the slide's just about dying on me. with these lines, there's all different amplitudes and signatures. Like when we're using them for navigation, I'm down in the Blue Mountains and we're cruising along. I say, oh, that's the same line we went over there, and the mob are looking at me, and because of signature, once you get your acuity level really developed, you work out that you can use these things as maps, because you can put a blindfold on and you know where you are because you're following signatures. It's the same like birds and whales and stuff. Anyway, they're the large key ones. They're easy to do that with. So
Trevor's teleporting right now.
sorry.
Yeah,
No, this light, I'm on solar power and one light just carked it. That's all right. Anyway, so oh gosh, I lost the plot again, Sandy. Sorry.
I know you've got some distractions there.
Oh yeah, so you got the hardware, and then the intent that goes into it is what it can really affect you. So the intensity of the electrical vibration can be disharmonic, and I referred to dead earth energy, compressed underground water, stagnant underground water. These are mechanical electrical signals of data. Okay, they're mechanical, but remember, if we got the mechanical or the physical vibratory set, the conscious vibration entrains in that. Okay, it can go into a chair, and it often does. You jump in someone else's car, and you get a feeling straight away if that person's happy, angry, whatever, because their imprint is in their chair where they sit all the time, their seat. You know, if you develop to that level.
That makes sense.
So do they have an effect? The lines themselves can do with their mechanical nature, their physical nature, but the effect that is often hitting people is what they're loaded with consciously. So there's 2 things you got to look out for there. There's the hardware and the software. And
So
to
is
know,
that
which is
loaded by me or loaded by somebody previously?
anybody. You got to work that out. You got to work that out. I mean, if you're someone who's living in the heart, you don't have to worry about self, because you're living in the heart. And if you're feeling humbug stuff, well, and you're living in the heart, well, then it's obviously someone else. I've been into houses, right? And if I get asked to douse someplace, I say, look, don't tell me anything. I don't even know why I'm going there. I don't want to be cold reading. And then I walk through someone's house and I tell them all the stuff, and I say, oh, this old fellow's sitting here and he's really depressed and everything, and all his energy is here in this chair and this blanket. How did I know that? I didn't. And they're just looking at me going, oh. I said, there's someone standing here. They're using this mirror, and I don't know, like, there's just so many things, it's endless. Okay, the thing is this: these people are not consciously putting a vibratory field into the articles within their home, but it's happening. Because otherwise, how can someone like I come along and tell them everything that's happening in that household, or what happened in people that owned it before? Because it's in the memory field.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
when I talk about the full range of sensibilities, you have 5 waking senses that everyone's referring to. You have around about, now we're up to around 33 physiological senses that science can study, and then you got the intuitive senses, which as of maybe 15 odd years ago, Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, started to put some serious study into these things. But all ancient cultures knew about them anyway. They just got suppressed from that transition into the psyop business, you know. Anyway, you probably know what I'm talking about. So I don't know. I lost the plot. Did that answer that, Sandy?
Yeah. Yes, totally.
Yeah. All right.
So probably one more question, because the time's getting on, Trevor, and your light's running out. Charlotte just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on words and using words in speech or writing that you don't really know what it means versus your actual intentions versus from your intention versus the vibration, meaning of word in the field. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can use a word not knowing but have an intention. Does your intention override the vibration of the spelling?
Can do, but not necessarily so. That's a very good question, because there's no straight well, one size does not fit all, basically. Yeah. So there are certain words that have got a sound imprint. If you use cymatics and you put them in there, and you'll see the crystalline shape form, and if it's all like deformed, doesn't look pretty, you know, you've probably seen how they freeze water and get the crystals, the Japanese guy, and all that sort of stuff, right? Well, then you know that the cymatics of that sound is not harmonic in terms of what we perceive to be harmonic, and that is within balance of nature. Okay. It's not that it's unnatural, because some of these sounds actually occur in nature, but they're not harmonic, constructive. They're probably more likely to be destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Words can change meaning simply with tone. So when you take the sound and change the tone, your intent is changing the meaning, but you really got to look at the cymatics and see if it's got humbug structure in there or not. So, but if you really charge something with love, you will probably override that cymatic to a greater degree anyway, because the vibration is coming from the heart. But you got to do that authentically. You can't do it just for, you know, like fooling around, gammon job, you know, if it's done really authentically. But why would you want to do that when you would already have an alternative or more appropriate word to use in the first place? So for me, it's about discovering, finding, whatever, the appropriate word and terminology in the first place. And if you're unsure, well, you know, use the words that you're using and just make sure you're very authentic with intent. I don't know whether that answers the question.
That's really good. I think that did. And I think there was just one more question that Sarah had during the week. And that was she went to visit. Maybe Sarah, do you want to talk about your visit to the doctor?
Oh, we're talking about that. Okay.
You wanted to ask Trevor about reptilians. We'll try and do this fairly short because we're running out of time. So
Okay. I had another question too, but okay. Yeah, so when I was at the doctor's, their eyes turned into slits, which was really unnerving for me because I don't normally see things. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, Joe said you had some knowledge on that, and I just was wondering, what your thoughts on that are. For me, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is really disturbing, and like, is this person human? And yeah, because
He shapeshifted
yeah,
into a reptilian, basically.
for me, yeah, for me, it was like, okay, it was like a bit more than just having the essence of that. It was more than that. It was like quite confronting, and yeah, and I just didn't really know what to make of it. So it's kind of been something I've been thinking about a lot. Yeah. So that was the question.
The vibration that I'm currently getting from you, Sarah, when you're telling this story is that you were not freaked out. You didn't run. Yeah?
No, I
Yeah.
didn't run.
No. You might have been disconcerted, but you didn't freak out.
No.
Okay. So that's good for a couple of reasons. If something like that happens to you, it's a test. And it's testing how balanced you are. Someone else wouldn't have seen that. You saw it. You were meant to see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perhaps.
That's it. That's a little bit like the crystal. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, maybe the word freaked out was a bit much too much, but it was just I didn't
I
expect
know you
it.
use, yeah, I know you use those terms, but I was just tapping into vibration to you when you're talking, and my mind was going, you weren't freaked out at all, really. You were just observing.
No, I was, well, I got freaked out afterwards. It takes me a
Yeah.
while to process
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, I was actually just staring at him like, okay, that's weird.
Mm.
And I was just like, all right. And then I was just like, okay. And then I left. But then it was more, I guess you're right. It was afterwards when I had time, because I think too much. And so
Yeah.
after I had time to like think about it too much, a few days later, I was like, oh, wow, that's, yeah, that was, you're right. At the time, I didn't really react. You're correct.
Yeah. So you're telling that story. Was there any particular question that you wanted?
Yeah, I
Ask
guess
with
my
them?
thoughts are there people, do you think that people are just carrying that energy inside of them and that's why I saw it? Or do you think there's like, is it more than that?
Well, there are a whole lot of narratives out there, and some of these individual people still behave like they're people and don't know there's another entity piggybacked or within them, and but that entity does, and if it feels exposed, it might do something. I'll tell a story what happened to me, and so to answer your question, there's a whole lot of different things that could go on. The only thing I can talk about is experience to me. Otherwise, I'm just telling someone else's story, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was at a dinner. There was only three of us. I was being billeted by a lady, and she said, "Oh, I've got this really good friend, and she'll come over for dinner because she wants to meet you." Because I was presenting on natural law and the original people's social psychology system in Austria, Vienna. Anyway, this lady came over and went up there, and it was just a nice, quiet dinner, sort of chat. And this lady said, "Oh yeah, well, because the lady who billeted me was really interested and I'm not sure what the right word is. She saw the value in original people's culture, you know, the stuff that I was sharing. She saw the levels of values that were in there. And her friend, I think she wanted to meet me and whatever, her to meet me because, you know, not to convince her to see it or whatever. But anyway, at one point she said, "Oh yeah, but you know, they wouldn't have been, you know, looked after and whatever until we came along and we helped them do all this." And I just looked at her and I said, "Oh yeah, what? Cut down all the trees and dig all the holes in the ground and everything else and causing all this humbug on the planet with all this, you know." So, and I was really calm about it. And then she morphed. So I'm sitting here, she's on my right, so the left side of her face, and all this just started to morph into reptile. And I looking at her, and it's very telepathic. She knew that I knew that she knew that I knew. Okay.
That I've
All
had
right.
that.
And neither of us brought it out in the open because the lady who billeted me was like busy eating, chewing, whatever, and she didn't really catch what was going on. But the entity inside this lady knew that I knew, and also knew that I knew that she knew that I knew. Yeah. And it was just like that. It was just like looking at each other. And that was it. Back. and I'm just sitting there going, okay. And I'm just, because my mind just can go pretty flat out sometimes, and I'm just going, just stay in the calm, stay in the calm, and then nothing, you know, nothing major happened. But I realized after, because I was thinking about it after, what was the cue to cause that? Okay, there was a certain level of exposure in that there was so sold and trenched on an idea that you know what progress is, that when another opinion came in that counteracted it and happened to be based on truth, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't have got that happen. I reckon it was based on truth, and that really perturbed them, and it just showed itself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
thanks for that. I'm glad I'm not the only one, I suppose. But the other thing that I guess bothers me is, do you think it's just an entity, or are people part human, part something else? Like they're not entirely human? That's my imagination getting carried away.
No, again, there's different narratives there. Some would say that, you know, the reptilian actually goes inside, or other entity actually goes inside, and others say there's piggyback and you got actually two personalities there, or more than two. You know, but the control never shows itself as a personality, but because it's in there, it actually creates more than one outer expression from the host. And so there's a lot of different things. I would you know, you'd have to, not one size fits all. You have to have a look at each individual case. And as again, I don't have experience with those other narratives other than I've read them, but that experience that I just shared with you is just direct to me, so I could, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I respect that you like try to stay with what you've experienced, and yeah, and
Well,
stick to that.
Yeah, I'm pretty blackfellow in that we stick to knowledge systems, not belief systems. If we got a belief, we know we've arrived at it because through experiential knowledge, you know, through experience, and then we believe it. So the meaning of the word belief has, you know, different contexts there. Instead of blind belief, we believe something because we know it. If someone says, "Do you believe in extraterrestrials?" I say, "No, I know about them." That's another story. That's another story.
Maybe we can make that
Well,
out.
JoJo's been there.
Yeah, I've been to lots of EPs. And maybe that can
Yeah.
be another discussion in a future podcast. And so good to hear so many ideas and your knowledge system around things. Trevor, it's been great. And we're now at sort of nearly 9:15. So
Yeah.
I might call it a
Yeah.
night, just because it's people are tired and
Yeah.
for a Thursday night. But it's been amazing, and thank you everyone that's come along and shared incredible stories. Really appreciate it. So thank you again.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone as well, because we all learn from each other. You know, even you folks asking questions, I go, oh, I've got to learn something here. It's all good. It's all good. I just quickly read the chats. Learning for natural law. Who was that?
Sarah.
Don't see. Oh, Sarah. Okay. Yeah, I can refer you to other stuff. They just get in touch via Joe, or if you're on Telegram, you'll see you can get in touch with me. I got some stuff there. I mean, I've been doing this, I don't know, 24 years now, like in the open. Before that, I didn't say anything. I was just very reserved, just watching. And I got to a point where I got a big kick from Spirit and said, no, you got to get out there and start fulfilling responsibility of role to you. Because if you got certain knowledge, you're supposed to be sharing it. I said, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think that all of these things that you're up, we can talk about the ETs, we can talk about natural law, and we can make those a particular session, and come and ask questions, and it's good. This is why I wanted to open it up, so that we can find out what people want to know about, and we can get Trevor's voice and message out there. So
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks,
I'm
guys.
happy. No, I'm happy to do that, as long as you folks realise I don't know everything. Okay. I just
together
you know,
we can just you know,
progress.
Yeah.
You know a lot more than us, Trevor.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, well, in certain fields, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
For sure. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice to catch up
See you,
with you all.
folks. Much love.
Everybody. Ciao.
Yeah.
Newid wrth i'r tymor droi